Hey everyone, on today's episode we're going to talk about scaling your business. The last 9 episodes or so, I've basically been beating you over the head with compliance issues, and although compliance is very important, I'm not going to say it's not. That's not all there is involved to a business. Reducing the risk is one part of the equation, but the other part of the equation is revenue. How do you increase your revenue? How do you get to the very next level that you've been wanting to get to? And I haven't made these principles up. This comes straight from Dr. Benjamin Hardy's playbook, The Science of Scaling. But I am a CPA, and I have seen under the hood of enough businesses to confirm that these principles are what it takes to scale your business to get to the next level. Now, I don't know if you've given this much thought before, but when you have your own business, your own construction business, or any business for that matter, you have what is an asset on your personal balance sheet. The value of that business is a hard asset, and it can be sold on an active market quicker than you even think. So the way it works is every industry will have its own metrics, will have its own valuation. However, in the construction industry, what I've seen time and time again is businesses usually go for 5 to 10x of EBITDA. So EBITDA is, in layman terms, the number closest to your net income, to your bottom line. And you would add back depreciation, amortization, all the funny stuff. So really, it's your bottom line. Whatever you are making bottom line, you can sell that to 5 to 10x, meaning if you take home $1 million, you can sell that business tomorrow on an active market for $5 to $10 million. Let's call it an average of $7.5 million. Now, you'd have to rebuild a business. You'd have to figure out your income streams, maybe live off passive income. There's a whole set of other issues there after you've sold the business. However, if you had a business that had $1 million bottom line, you can take home, very comfortably said, $7.5 million within the next so many months, into the period it takes to do due diligence and sell the business. So that's actually a lot of incentive for people to grow their business. Although you may not be thinking of selling your business tomorrow, it would be very nice to know that if you wanted to retire tomorrow, fly off to, Thailand or Philippines or live somewhere very easy, you can do that with selling your business. Most people won't get to an exit until they get close to retirement. I've had clients who, retire early when they're 50 years old, 55 years old, sell their business and go live an easy life. So that's if that's not motivator enough, I don't know what would be. So that being said, in growing your business, you have all the incentive to grow your business. One big risk I've seen, one other thing is what's called key man risk. You don't want to be the sole operator of your business. If God forbid you got hit by a bus tomorrow or something were to happen to you, will your business keep operating? And that is a very, very important thing, because even upon exit, the purchasers will always look for key man risk. If everything is tied to one person, that's usually not a good thing. You're not going to get the higher end of that 5 to 10x of EBITDA. You're going to get probably the lower end and maybe even a discount. So what you eventually want to do is remove yourself from the business. You don't want to be the sole operator. You want to be such that if you took a month off and went to Hawaii or wherever, the business would run itself. So most construction people I work with, our construction business owners, are still very heavily involved in their business. There's a lot of key man risk. So from an overarching perspective, what you want to do is eventually, it's not going to happen overnight obviously, remove yourself from the center of that business, almost becoming like a passive investor. I know, easier said than done. But anyways, these are very high level points you want to take into account. And mind you, I don't expect you to come out of this and entirely change everything overnight. These are issues that you need to think about over time, and it'll take 6 to 12 months probably until it's ingrained in your psychology, and eventually where you start making the changes. Those Rome wasn't built overnight. It's going to take time to make all these changes. Now, I want to move on to another set of issues is tracking. Measurement is king. You need to track every aspect of your business, starting from marketing, sales, and cash flow. So I'm going to throw just a couple metrics out there. I don't want to dive into the deep end, and I want you to just take a couple metrics, make an Excel sheet, maybe sit down with somebody who's more of a numbers person, and you track these 4 metrics. I want you to track trailing 12 months, your trailing 12-month sales, meaning what your sales were in the last 12 months, and compare that to any prior 12 months. But your trailing 12 months is a very important number. And it's very important that this number keeps going up so that you're tracking higher over time. Number 2, cash flow projections. This is more of a survival thing. A lot of construction businesses are cash flow intensive. You have payroll to make, you have materials to purchase. Cash flow can get very, very tricky in a construction business. So you want to have cash flow projections 1 month out and 12 months out. And a lot of times there could be debt involved. You need to make debt repayments, things like that. You need to be able to track all this and make sure cash flow is always met. So we have trailing 12 months, we have cash flow projections, and then on a marketing end, you want to make sure you're tracking both impressions and conversions. This is more on the marketing end. A lot of contractors don't do this, but if you did want to scale, now you're going to have to step into the line of marketing as well. But now, all these aside, valuation of business, key man risk, key KPIs. Now I want to dive into what is the framework for scaling. Now, Dr. Benjamin Hardy talks about 3 concepts required for scaling, which is frame, floor, and focus. Your frame is your view of what's possible, and you need to set a goal that feels impossible. So quantifiably speaking, that would be 10x what you think is reasonable. So if you're used to adding $200,000 a year of revenue year over year, then you need to make your new goal $2 million of revenue. And you're going to sit back and think to yourself, well, that's impossible. But that's the point of this exercise. Is number 1, you have to set a goal that feels so impossible that you have to rethink your entire framework, your entire crew, your systems, the way you deliver goods, the way you acquire customers, everything. Everything needs to be rethought. Now, next we move to the floor, and floor is the minimum of what you're willing to accept. Now, undeniably, you have clients that are your D and F clients. These are, presumably F would be fail, but even C and D clients. These are clients that with your new framework, you will no longer be willing to accept. And that will bring you to a new challenge, is to client acquisition. So now if you were to cut your C and D clients, what makes you keep your C and D clients? It's the fact that you probably think, well, their work and their revenue, their top line, it gives my crew something to do. Well, if you were to cut your C and D clients tomorrow, what would you be left with? You'd be left with a lot more capacity. You'd be left with the ability to work more on your business rather than be consumed in your business. And you might even be left with a marketing problem. And that's the problem that you should be working towards, as opposed to serving those clients that are just quite not worth your time. So the key here is once you develop your new frame, you've developed that new impossible goal, you now raise your floor to what you're willing to accept in terms of new clients, in terms of new business, and in terms of new ways of producing and delivering the service. Now that your frame and floor have been readjusted, you have to now work on your focus. Your focus is going to be directed at the things that move the needle in the right direction in the allotted period of time. Most people spend their days wasting a lot of time. They end up working on things that are just not value add, that they're thinking more in terms of effort. I had a long day, I had a hard day, I did all this, but instead there were things that they could have done that were truly value add for them, and they could have passed along and delegated the lower value things. And that's the focus, is you need to have laser focus. You can't have a moment in your day where you're wasting time, you're on a job site you don't need to be on, that you could have delegated easily. You're inundated with work that truly isn't worth your time. You probably spent a day counting cash or reconciling receipts or invoices when that could have been handed off to an administrative worker. You need to spend your time in all the right places every single day without wasting time like most people do. Now you might be thinking that's all great theory, but what does this really translate to in my construction business? So let's try to get practical here. Let's say you're a general contractor and you serve residential and light commercial projects. You first set your impossible goal, which is adjusting your frame. Let's say you say, I want $10 million of extra revenue in the coming year. You would start off your marketing cash flow plan with this goal, and you would reverse engineer that number. So one way to go about this would say, I want 50 new contracts with an average contract value of $250,000 each. But maybe you want to give yourself some space. So 50 new contracts in the coming year, in 2026, with an average contract value of $250,000 each. Now, if you were the one going job site to job site, getting into the details of each project, will you be able to take on and service 50 jobs at a contract value of $250,000 each? Probably not. So you're going to have to rethink exactly how you go about your entire business practice. And that's the exact point of this exercise. It needs to melt down your current systems, your current practices, and have you rethink from scratch how you're going to go about doing everything. And you need to work towards that goal of 50 new clients with $250,000 contract value each. Next, we move to raise our floor. So what are we no longer willing to accept? Anything under that $250,000, we're not going to give it too much time of day. We might be, a little with it for something that's 200,000 or maybe in the ballpark. And obviously we're definitely shooting for the ones above that as well. However, we're not taking calls for anything less than, let's call it 150,000. You can establish that as your new floor. If anybody calls me for any small thing that's just going to take up my time, take up clutter, they're going to be a complaining client, might try to micromanage me or my team, all that, this is our floor, and we're just not willing to accept that. There's other contractors out there. They can take that job all day long. You can call the subs directly, do whatever you want. You're somebody else's problem. That's not, you're below my floor. And that's really what you're going to establish. Now, the final step is your focus, and that is to build a scalable system. You cannot scale a complicated system. That means you need to decrease your service offerings. Maybe only take on kitchen remodels going forward. Maybe only take on office build-outs. Whatever it is, find that one thing, become really good at it, and have that scale all the way up. That will, in and of itself, be your marketing message. When you're complicating things, you're doing the entire project start to finish on your own, you're going to be the jack of all trades. You're just going to be okay at everything. You're not going to be the best at that one thing. The key is to be the best at one thing and just take that all the way up the scale. Now, in terms of timeline, if you're thinking, I want to achieve X goal, we said $10 million in the coming year. That is a very, very, scalable timeline. That's a very possible timeline. People do it all the time. Okay, I see it happen all the time. People get to 7 and 8 figures within a couple of years, what have you, and it can be done. If you think it can't be done, you're wrong. You're just not focused enough. What should have seemed like your 10-year goal should now be your 2-year goal, really. With the right focus, you could definitely get it there. Now, I'm going to put down here to the left common pitfalls I've seen, common scenarios that hold contractors back, that hold these people back from really being able to scale their business. So number one, they increase the volume but not their margins or systems. So see, that's very important. It's not just a matter of increasing your workload and driving yourself and your team into the ground. It's also a matter of increasing your margins. Do you have a pricing problem? Do you have a marketing problem? And this could all be interrelated. Like, you might not necessarily need more of a headcount of clients. You might need a higher contract value of clients, and you might it might be a marketing issue that you have. So I mean, that's number one. Number two, they keep too many service lines. Again, when you're just trying to go to get any business, you're spreading yourself really thin. You're not going to be that great. You're not going to be the best at everything. It's just not possible. It will never happen. So basically, you want to find the one thing that you enjoy the most, that you have an affinity towards, and really, really get good at that and pursue that. Become the best at that one thing. Almost everybody that scales is like the top in the one thing that they do. You can't scale a complex system. Number three, they don't raise standards. So you can't keep those low value clients around. Those C and D clients are always going to hold you back from serving the A and B clients. The A and B clients should be taking up most of your time, not the C and D clients. But I bet you anything, those C and D clients are the ones that are taking up not just the most of your time, but most of your headspace. When you're off the job, you're thinking about them the most, how to, CYA the most, how to, just get them out of your hair. And those aren't the clients that should be taking up your time and your headspace. So that's another one. Number four, they set a goal, but leave it to 10 years. Again, anything that you tell yourself is a 10-year goal is not a goal. That's just you procrastinating. That's you not being serious and not being focused. You should be able to achieve almost anything in 2 to 3 years if you're focused enough. That's for sure. They hire more hands, but not a line in talent. Yeah, again, it's some people have vanity metrics. I have 200 employees. I have 500 employees, whatever. But at the end of the day, you need to just get over yourself. It's not just a matter of how many employees you have. It's also your realization per employee, your utilization per employee, revenue per employee. All these things, they're very, very relevant. So, it's not just about vanity metrics here. At the end of the day, you don't scale this business until you scale you. Chances are you're your number one bottleneck and you're your number one enemy to having this thing finally take off. Now, to make full circle again, and I'm going to put it in the bottom right here. So number one, you set an impossible goal. This is your frame. You raise your floor. You basically get rid of, what you're no longer willing to tolerate based on your new impossible goal. You focus your system, team, services on what scales. You have to build a scalable business. Number four, you shift your identity from just building to running a scalable business. That, again, you have to scale you in order to get this thing to work. And number five, always remember to track your KPIs. You need to track your metrics. Again, you should track your trailing 12 months, your cash flow, your impressions, and your conversions. These are the four very basic things. There's way more KPIs and metrics that I can get into, like revenue per crew, realization per job, hours per job, number of new jobs, etc. There's so many more, but I want you to just really start with the basics. I want you to be able to measure your progress over the last 12 months and how that's growing over time. I want you to manage your cash flows, because that's the biggest problem I usually see in construction businesses. And then on more of a sales and marketing end, you need to start being the leader of your sales and marketing. Even if you hire a part-time CMO or whoever, there's no such thing as done for you marketing. It's always at best going to be done with you, and you need to be the ringmaster. You need to understand what goes into that marketing. So you need to track impressions and conversions. That's very important. At the end of the day, like I said, you want to be able to step out of your business and almost become a passive investor in your business. You want to be able to remove yourself and the business runs itself. The valuation of your business, if you're going to try to one day make an exit for 7-8 figure, the valuation of your business, you want it to be closer to the 5 to 10x to the 10x multiple. And that's ultimately what you want to get at, is the highest possible value of the business today, even if you're not selling today. To know that is a very significant value, and one day you can have a very good exit. And that's all I have for today. I hope you found that helpful. Click like, subscribe, turn on notifications for any updates, and I hope to see you in the next one.